Start on this computer. All right, great. Hi, Francesca.
Hi, Veronica.
I'm so happy you're here. So we had some tech glitches, so we are going to post this video in the group, and I'm going to watch the thread carefully for all of the questions coming in. I think I have one actually. But tell us a little bit about yourself and how you started teaching private yoga.
Okay, sure. So I started teaching in 2005, and it was in 2006 I got my first private client. I was before that just kind of doing the new yoga teacher hustle. You know, I was like running all over the place, subbing, teaching at gyms, teaching at corporate places. I think by the end of 2005, I was teaching like 12 to 15 classes a week, but they were all group classes. So I got my first private client in 2006 and was passed down to me by a friend of mine who's this really wonderful teacher. But she was passing the client on to me because she was kind of like, for lack of a better word, bored teaching her, and she had more stuff she wanted to do and didn't want to take the time to go all the way to the Upper East Side. But because I was just like, you know, scrapping together things and eating peanut butter and jelly for every single meal, I was like, sure, I'll take whatever private client. I don't care if it's boring. Like, that sounds fine. But I had a really different experience with this student right from the bat. I didn't find it boring at all. I found it fascinating. I found it very challenging to try to, I couldn't articulate this at the time, but now after so many years have passed, what I really wanted to do was get her engaged in the practice. Because the reason that my friend passed her on, she thought she was kind of boring to teach, was because she didn't really care. She wasn't that into it. She just wanted to kind of chat. She wanted to feel like she did yoga. She wanted to tell people she did yoga, but she wasn't really that invested. So you just had to kind of keep her busy. You could do the same thing every week. She didn't want to do more than 45 minutes, kind of in and out. And right away I thought, like, let me see if I can get her engaged and get her more interested in what she's doing. And because I was able to do that, she saw a lot of meaningful change in her body and in the way she felt in her life that stemmed from our work together.
Mm-hmm.
So after maybe 6 or 8 months, she bought 5 sessions with me for a friend of hers. And I did 5 sessions with the friend, continued working with the friend after those 5 sessions, and had a similar situation. She was a very different person. She had very different things she needed to work on. But the through line was that even though she'd been doing yoga for like 25 years, she had a really pretty serious practice. She had never found that the work she did on the mat came with her in her life. And from the work that we did together, she really found that. So from there, she asked me to work with her husband. He really didn't want to do yoga. He thought it was super weird. He was just like not into that kind of stuff. But I was able to kind of get him hooked. One of the ways I got him hooked was by, first of all, talking to him about like the other physical activity he liked to do. And golf was one of his favorite things. And so I just asked him if he was good. I asked him what his handicap is, which is like how you know how good somebody is. And it was bad. He was bad at golf. So I just asked him if he wanted to work on that. And that kind of got his ears a little perked up. And over our many years together, his golf game improved a lot. So when his golf game started to get better, I started getting emails from all the other guys that worked at his firm. And so it was like within a year then, I was teaching 25 private clients a week.
Wow. So what I love about your story is that you really met the students where they were.
Yeah.
And I think that that is something that we sometimes forget as yoga teachers, especially when we're in the hustle and we want to make ends meet and we want to really do this full time, is that we forget to meet the student where they are because we're so worried about our own stuff.
Yeah, I think teachers really run into this feeling of feeling like they don't know enough, feeling like they're not good enough. And so and we don't know enough and we're not good enough. So we can all just like absorb that, let it in and get over it and like keep moving forward. To compensate for this feeling like we don't know enough, like we're not good enough to be working with somebody one-on-one, we get really attached to like what we think they want or what we think a yoga practice should look like.
Yep.
Kind of dig our heels in, when I think to really meet a private client where they are and to get them really engaged in their practice, we have to be super open and flexible and curious. Try lots of different ways of teaching, lots of different kinds of practice until we find the one that gets them hooked.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So something that I really admire about your story is that you were able to hook them, as you said, right from the get-go. And I think that was about meeting them where they are.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any other tips on how to hook them?
Good question. I think that you have to give yourself sort of the energetic space to know that you're not going to be able to give them their perfect lesson the first time you meet them.
Mm-hmm.
The first bunch of times you meet somebody, you're mostly going to be gathering data. And I consider a student a new student, like where I'm still learning them, I'm still figuring them out. It's still kind of like, yeah, that was a total bust, that didn't work, for the first year that I teach somebody. So I don't want people to put too much pressure on themselves to like be the most perfect teacher for this particular student on day one, because you can't. You don't know them and you don't know what's going to get them hooked. But I think what I was able to do and what did kind of keep people really interested in continuing to work with me, even though I didn't know their body and I didn't know their heart mind, and I wasn't sure at the beginning what would help, is people could tell I was paying very deep attention to them. And I think that being witnessed really helped people, first of all, feel really seen, which is super healing. But because I was so curious about what they were experiencing, and I was so curious, like gathering data about how this felt in their body or how they felt after this practice or this pose, it made them interested as well.
Mm-hmm.
So from the beginning, it's like we sort of co-create together their personal yoga practice that's going to be really meaningful for them.
And how do you maintain that? So I know you've had many, many, many private clients for many years. And even when you left New York City, people were just devastated that you were leaving and you had to hand them off. How do you maintain them? And then how have you taught your mentees to maintain those clients over time?
I mean, the main thing, and I've said it a bunch of times already today, is to have people engaged in their practice and to make sure that they feel like they have ownership of it. It's funny because I talk a lot about how to work with your clients in a way that gets them committed and keeps them committed to their practice and to your work together for the long term, so that you don't have to keep looking for new clients, because that's a lot of work. And some people will read that as like, oh, you're creating codependent students. But I actually don't think that's true at all. A lot of my students also go to group classes, also work with a trainer, have a spiritual teacher that they see. They do other stuff. I'm really proud of this now. Every single one of my private clients has their own home practice.
Wow.
15 or 20 minutes that they do it pretty much every day. Every single one. Even these guys who are like gym guys who like don't really want to do yoga, but will like do some stretching. Full, well-rounded yoga practice in their gym at work, because that's part of like their routine.
That's amazing.
I know. I'm very happy about that. It wasn't like that as much with my clients in New York. I think most of them had something, but not every single one of my clients has a dedicated home practice. So I'm not creating students that are dependent on me, but I am building a relationship with my students where they are so engaged and they're so curious and they're so excited about the work that we're doing together that they stick with it for the long term. Even when life gets busy, even when finances get tight, they make space and money for this. Even when their schedules are crazy. I have a client that I see twice a week who's probably been through 3 different trainers. And she kind of is like, yeah, it's just really expensive. It's kind of out of the way. Like there's always a reason that she stops working with them, but she's never, ever considered to not continue our work together.
Wow. So that's how valuable it is to her.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that leads to another question, which is the money piece.
Yeah.
And, it's obviously New York is different than LA, and LA is different than Washington, D.C., and Washington, D.C. is different than Dallas, Texas. But in general, get asked this a lot. What do you think the ballpark is for charging for a private lesson?
Yeah, it's so hard to say because like all those places you mentioned are pretty big cities. But I have a lot of teachers I work with who are in teeny tiny small towns where the cost of living is dramatically lower than cost of living in all those big cities you just mentioned. So I hesitate to say a number just because there is such a range. But I think one of the best things for teachers to do is to do a lot of market research and to see what acupuncture costs in your town, what personal, which is going to be on the, so I recommend like you do get a bunch of data pulled about all kinds of wellness services in your area. So like acupuncture, I would say would be one of the more expensive. Maybe chiropractic care is one of the more expensive. Personal training would be on the lower end. And just like pull data for massage, chiropractic care, physical therapy, mental health services, acupuncture, like pull the numbers, see what the range is, and then consider your level of experience, your level of education, how busy you are, and pick a number in the middle.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your, well, actually, I have one other question, then I want to talk about your program.
Yeah.
What do you think are the most important qualities for a person that wants to be a successful full-time private yoga teacher?
First of all, a very deep level of self-awareness. And having done and in the process of doing a lot of their own inner work. We really have to know what our stress and discomfort and vulnerability and what that feels like in our body, so we can separate it from the emotional energy that we feel from our students. So we really have to be super clear and grounded in ourselves, because I think the thing that makes the biggest difference in yoga teachers' ability to be supportive and authentically grounded is to really know themselves. Because one thing that people say, I'm very short and I kind of smile a lot, and I sort of sometimes come off as being like perky or bubbly. And so I've had people say to me, well, you're perky and bubbly, so of course private clients like you, I'm not really like that. But I don't think perky and bubbly is and first of all, I'm not always like that, but is the only like type of person that people like being around. People like being around other people who are in a tender and loving relationship with themselves and carry themselves with a grounded and authentic energy. So it doesn't have to be like me, you get to be you from a really steady and sweet place. And people really respond to being around other people who are like that. And you might be able to think about like a friend that you have that you just always feel so good when you're in her presence. You always feel so calm. You always feel so seen. And that's partly because she has a very tender and sweet relationship with herself. Mm-hmm. And I think when we bring that energy to our private lessons, it makes people, first of all, more willing to like do hard things with us and feel good being in our presence and want to keep working with us. So I think the most important qualities are self-awareness, and that sort of leads or comes from having done a lot of our own inner work. And then beyond that, you be exactly who you are. You know what I mean? If you're like naturally a very funny person, then you'll bring some of that and the people will like it. And if you're not naturally very funny, then like I wouldn't try to be funny, you know? And if you're naturally kind of bossy, then you can bring some of that. And if you're not naturally bossy, then don't bring it. There's no quality that you need or anybody needs to be a really good private teacher other than a deep and loving and authentic relationship with themselves, because that reads so strongly to the people that we're in the room with.
Wow. No, that's amazing and so true.
Yeah.
Okay. So taking a hard left from that is we're going to talk a little bit about how people can find you and how they can work with you, as I am segueing out of doing straight yoga business coaching. I'm doing it within a different format going forward, at least for this year.
Right.
But I'm really excited because the 15th, you're going to be launching your free private yoga series. And I think these videos are amazing. And any person who's teaching private yoga needs to watch them, because they'll give you a lot of tips on how to conduct yourself in that experience with a brand new client.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's bunches of ways. I have a Facebook group called Elevate. It's a really big, beautiful place just for yoga teachers. It's a really supportive group. We're very nice to each other in there. It's not a lot of like, my rule is that we can share from our own experience, but we don't make comments about the way other people have decided to teach. Everybody's supported in doing what feels right for them. So that's a really great, fun place to hang out. And then, as you said, January 15th, the first video in a 3-part series is released. And that is a crazy thing that I did. I still am so nervous to think about this. I had a filmmaker come and film me teaching 2 private lessons. One of them was to someone who I knew very well. It was my dad. It was really funny. Like, I've been trying to get my dad to do yoga for 15, 20 years. And he always kind of was like, my dad's a runner. He's like but when I asked him if I could film him having his first private lesson, he was all in.
That's so funny.
So funny. And then the other person was someone I'd literally never met before. So the reason I wanted to have the filmmaker come film my dad is because he hadn't done yoga before. He's in his late 60s. He's been running the same 3.3 mile loop 6 days a week for 30 years.
Wow.
That's my dad. That's who he is. So he's tight, Anyway, so I thought that would be you'd see some interesting stuff in that private lesson, because I'd have to work around. One of the things you see in that video actually is I tried to do a bunch of stuff to prepare him for a downward facing dog, but downward dog was totally not appropriate. So we took it to the wall, so you see all of that. And then the other person that the filmmaker filmed was someone I'd not met before, much younger guy, in his early 30s, and had very little experience with yoga, but I had literally never met him until we shook hands on camera. And so his first private lesson is filmed. So you just get to see how I do an intake, how I work with some of that awkward meeting a new person for the first time energy. So that film was broken down. There's just little snippets of it that we released for free. The first one goes out January 15th. And you can get all those in your email. They won't be posted anywhere else. If you go to the website, we can post this maybe in the links below. LearnToTeachPrivateYoga.com. That's where that is. And then you'll be on my newsletter list. And when anything exciting happens, you'll know about it. I have a podcast also called The Mentor Session, Support and Strategy for Yoga Teachers with me, where I do some episodes by myself and some interviews with other people who teach, mostly people who teach yoga teacher training. So it's really people who teach yoga teachers having conversations that we think will be interesting for yoga teachers wanting to deepen their craft. So I think those are all the spots.
Yes, and you have your program launching later this month.
Right. So the free video series kind of leads into the Science of the Private Lesson, which is a 12-week online course. It also happens in person in 6-day chunks. Have one in Oklahoma and one in Columbus this summer. But the online training is happening soon. Registration opens January 23rd. And it's a 12-week course where we just dive really, really deep into everything that we've been talking about here today.
Amazing. So
Yeah.
I am excited to be an affiliate for that course going forward.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be sharing that link with you guys. And we'll definitely keep this conversation going with Francesca. She's going to pop into the Facebook group and answer questions. And so if you have questions for her, you can leave them in the group. And we'll be there to answer them.
Yep.
Thank you so much for being here. Happy New Year.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Yes, I'm so excited for people.
I'm excited to meet all your people. Yeah, I'm excited to get to know them too.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, I'll see you soon.
Okay, bye.
Bye.